Suddenly, images flashed through his mind faster than he could comprehend. An ear-piercing screech rang through his ears. His entire body seemed to be engulfed in a darkness so suffocating he thought he would drown in it. The images kept scrolling faster and faster and through his mind, each one relentlessly overwhelming his senses with information. He felt as though he was about to perish, that the darkness was about to consume him, and his brain would explode from information overload. For an amount of time completely unknown to him, he continued to suffer this strange fate. Then, as quickly as it began, everything once more fell into silent darkness. Slowly, he opened his eyes and saw through blurred vision that he was lying on the floor inside of the crypt. Samara and Torn were kneeling beside him, trying to talk to him through ringing ears. Slowly his blurred vision cleared, and the ringing subsided. "Silas! Are you okay? Speak to us! What happened?" He heard them both saying in unison. Silas sat up, his body still aching from pain. I think I'm okay. What happened?" A cold, burning sensation continued to chill his hand. Looking down, he noticed the strange silver amulet gripped tightly in his fingers. He screamed and threw it across the room. The amulet clanked and dinged as it bounced across the stone floor. "Hey, what was that?" Torn asked, turning towards the thrown object. Silas didn't speak, his mind racing, trying to put reality back into his senses. Torn stood, walking towards the amulet he'd thrown. "Don't touch it!" Silas yelled to him. Torn ignored him and picked the amulet up, then rotated it in his hand slowly. "Why not?" Torn asked. "It's really cool. Where'd you find it?" "Torn, this is no time to be looking at stupid trinkets. Silas, are you okay? You completely disappeared for a minute," Samara exclaimed. What?" Silas responded in confusion. "You were standing right over there by that sword. I saw you. I was just about to come over and see what you were looking at when all of a sudden you were gone," Samara said, wrapping her arms around him. "I was so worried. I didn't know what happened to you. I thought you were gone forever." Silas blushed. I really have no idea. I'm a little freaked out at the moment." He shook his head, then did his best to recount to both Samara and Torn the strange world of darkness, the whispers, and everything else he could remember. "But when the images were shooting through my head, it felt like it was going on for hours. You say I was only gone for just a minute?" "If I had to guess," Torn chimed in, "I would say maybe 2.5 minutes or so, give or take just a little bit. I didn't see you disappear, but I definitely saw you reappear. I didn't believe Samara when she said you touched the skull and disappeared, so I went over and touched the same skull, but nothing happened to me." He stuck out a hand and helped Silas to his feet. "Torrin," Silas said wide-eyed. "Torrin, look at the amulet. It has the stone inside." The same dark purple, almost black stone with the strange wispy purple light in the center was embedded right in the center of the amulet. Its eerie purple light swirled slowly in its irregular pattern as it sat firmly, fused to the center of the amulet. "Yeah, that's how it was when you threw it," Torn explained. "It wasn't like this when you found it?" Silas shook his head. No, they were separated." "What do you think this means?" Samara asked. Just as Silas was about to respond, they heard a low voice coming from behind them. "What are you kids doing down here?" All three of them screamed, jumping into each other's arms and falling down on the ground. They spun their heads around to see Old Man Uthrin standing in the doorway behind them. "You shouldn't be here," he continued. "This is a dark and dangerous place. Do any of your parents know about this? This cave is strictly prohibited. You shouldn't even know about it. Why, when I tell them where you've been, He stopped, his eyes fixed on the amulet in Torrin's hand. He stood motionless, wordless, for nearly a minute, his eyes never leaving the gaze of the amulet. Finally, a shaky finger pointed towards Torrin's hand, and a voice even shakier than his hand escaped the old man's mouth. "Boy, what do you have?" I don't know," Torrin replied weakly. Clearing his voice, he continued, "Silas found it." Old Man Uthrin walked slowly towards him, as if the amulet would all of a sudden jump out of Torrin's hands and bite him. "Let me see it," Uthrin whispered. Torrin quickly handed the amulet over to Uthrin, eager to be rid of it. Uthrin lifted the amulet to his face, his eyes wide with fear. He studied the amulet and stone for several minutes, his breathing growing slightly shallower as his mind worked out a hidden mystery within himself. "How did you find this?" he finally asked. Silas swallowed, confused and scared at all of the events that had just transpired. He did his best to recount the experience to Uthrin. Samara and Torin filling in their side of the story were appropriate. Uthrin said, uneasily stroking his white beard. Silas watched the old man, taking in his physical presence. Uthrin was very intimidating, especially for being an older man. His arms were toned and thick. His face was stern and strong, the face of a warrior. How had he ever believed Torin that Uthrin was nothing more than a storyteller? Looking at him in this new light, it was obvious that Uthrin was much more powerful and wise than he ever would have guessed. Finally, his deep blue eyes met Silas. "Do you remember any of the images you saw? Can you explain them to me with any level of detail?" Silas shook his head. "Maybe, but there was just so much information that I don't know if I could remember it all right now. I'm still pretty shook up." Uthrin pondered his thoughts again, his gaze fixed upon the amulet in his hand. "Wait a second," Torin piped up, his courage returning to him. "Why are you down here if this place is so dark and dangerous?" "Because," Uthrin said, his eyes not leaving the amulet, "I was minding my own business when all of a sudden one of the magic wards I had placed near the entrance of the cave went off. I came to see who had set it off." "Magic ward? What the heck is that? And how do you even know about this place?" Torin asked, his mouth obviously moving faster than his mind. Samara looked at him with a glare, trying to send the message to shut his mouth. "I should be asking you that question, young man," Uthrin replied, finally moving his eyes towards Torin. "I was on the Council of Light when we came here and destroyed Arakorn and his evil works. You, on the other hand, should have no knowledge of this place." "You were a part of the Council of Light when they killed Arakorn?" Silas asked in astonishment. "Yes. I am one of the only ones left from that council. The rest have all passed away or have been killed by Malos. May the light be with them always." His eyes lingered back down to the amulet, then a look of determination passed the old man's face. "Enough about that. I fear that you have come away with much more than you three bargained for in finding this stone and amulet. In looking for treasure, you have somehow stumbled upon something that I in the Council of Light catastrophically missed. It's almost as if it were fate." His deep blue eyes pierced into Silas, causing a chill to run up his back. "We have much to discuss with your families, so, if you don't mind, I'll hold on to that amulet for now, and you three will follow me back to Shilverst." Uthrin placed the amulet into the pocket of his robe. He was wearing what seemed to be an old battle mage robe, probably from back when he was in the Council of Light. It was yellow with white and gold trim around the hems. The symbol of light magic sat in the center of his chest, which was a star that had two short arms on the left and right, a medium-sized arm on the top with a more extended arm at the bottom. Uthrin paused for a moment, then pulled the amulet back out of his pocket and looked at Silas. "On second thought, why don't you hold on to it for now, Silas? If you were able to find it when the entire Council of Light and I were not able to, there must be a reason." Silas hesitated, but eventually took the amulet from Uthrin. "Come now, let's get back to Shilverst, and we can discuss the consequences of your actions." Uthrin pulled his hands in front of his chest, his fingers making a symbol in front of his body, the tips of his thumbs together with the palms facing out. He then curved his pointer fingers and joined them together in a heart formation. Next, he pointed the rest of his fingers in a diagonal until they joined from each hand, creating a diamond symbol above the heart. His hands and eyes then began to glow a bright yellow color, spreading additional light throughout the crypt. "Oh wow," Samara said, finding her voice. "Are you really going to do some light magic?" "Yes, I believe that would be the best way to get out of here, and most definitely the fastest. Now, come join hands in a circle with me." "Whoa," Silas and Torin said in unison. Uthrin looked even more powerful with a yellow glow of magic flowing around his body. Silas had heard of the ancient art of elemental magic growing up, but he'd only ever seen it used once, on the most terrifying day of his life, when Malos had attacked. "Are we using light to teleport?" Samara asked in excitement. "I read about it in one of the books that you gave me." "Yes. Now come and join hands." Torin and Silas both looked at each other, stunned. After the moment of confusion, they eventually joined hands with Samara in a circle. Uthrin then closed his eyes again, and the yellow light that was surrounding his hands started to spread until it covered his entire body. He joined hands with the others, completing the circle. Then the light began to spread around the circle from Uthrin's arms down into Silas, then to Torin, and finally to Samara. When the light reached Silas, he was surprised to feel a warm, soft, comforting feeling from the light. It felt almost as if it was alive. The light continued around the circle until everyone was submerged entirely, then whoosh! A bright light, almost as bright as the sun, yet somehow not damaging to the eye, came down as a pillar in the middle of the circle. About 3 seconds later, the light dissipated, and they were all standing on the road outside of the crypt. "Wow! Oh wow, that was amazing!" Samara exclaimed. Silas looked at Torin, whose expression told the exact same story as his thoughts did. What in the world just happened? And how did something so incredible just come from Old Man Uthrin? "Now then," Uthrin started, "how in the name of the light did you all get past the guards?" Silas looked between Torin and Samara. "It's a long story, but it involves a cart that we stashed in a grove of trees." Uthrin nodded. "Very well. Let's retrieve that and head back towards Shilverst. There is much that we need to discuss about your discovery." Then, looking directly at Silas, he continued, "Your role in this war may be more important and pivotal than you could ever imagine, especially for you, my boy.